Dave said, "Forget about the foam padding. Forget about the upholstery. Don't put fabric on it. Put wheels on it. What you have down there isn't a chair without covering. What you have down there is a go-kart without wheels. Put wheels on that thing and you'll have one very happy little boy on Christmas morning." Then he said, "I'm going to walk Arthur." The next night, after supper, Sam called Morley into his room. He was frantic. "The needles won't go through anymore," he said. He waved at a pile of wool laying on his bed, another 6-inch square of knitting, each line of the square getting progressively tighter, giving the work the appearance of a triangle resting on its point. "You have to relax," said Morley. "I only have 2 days left," said Sam. "2 days is not a lot of time," said Morley. Sam nodded his head in vigorous agreement. "But it should be enough time for a pro like you to knit a scarf," she said. "I'm knitting a coat, not a scarf," said Sam. "Oh," said Morley. "I thought you were knitting a scarf. Let me start it for you." Once again she began a row of stitches, and once again handed it down to her son. Then she stood up. "I have to do the dishes," she said. On Christmas Eve, after Sam and Stephanie were in bed and the last present was wrapped and under the tree, Morley called Dave down to the basement. "Can you help me carry this upstairs?" she said. She had taken the wheels off of Sam's old wagon and attached them to the bottom of the chair. Dave climbed into it and smiled. She had left the wagon handle in place. It rested between his legs like a joystick. "He'll love it," he said. And then he screamed. She was pushing him towards the washing machine. First gently, then faster and faster. "Where's the brake?" is the last thing he howled before he crashed into a wicker basket full of dirty clothes. They could see light spilling out from under Sam's door when they went upstairs. They could hear the sound of his needles rocking together. "He's still at it," said Morley. "What should we do?" It was almost 1. "Come to bed," said Dave. "His door is shut. He wants to do this himself." "He was working on a scarf," said Morley as she prepared for the bed. "But this afternoon he changed it into a headband. It wasn't going to be big enough for a scarf. When I suggested headband, you know what the little bugger said? 'But isn't the head the fattest part of her?' It was the most pathetic headband you've ever seen. God, I hope she'll wear it, at least around the house." "He's going to love his go-kart," said Dave. Morley was sitting on the edge of the bed. She turned around. "Stephanie drew your name," she said. "There's something you should know about your present." Dave said, "No, don't tell me anything. I want to be surprised." Morley stood up and walked towards the bedroom window. "Don't worry," said Dave. "It'll be fine." And so it was. Stephanie, it turned out, had not paid Becky Lawrence to make her father's present. She had written to her great-grandmother in Cape Breton and asked her to ship a photo of Dave and his father to Lawrence's house, COD. It was a photo that had amazed Stephanie the moment she saw it, which had been 2 summers ago, when she had gone to the Big Narrows for a week by herself. The picture was taken when Dave was 5 years old. In it, he is standing on the piano bench in a parlor, which makes him the same height as his father's bass fiddle. They are both holding it between them, and laughing, both of them, her grandfather's head moving slowly backwards to the side, and her father, a little boy, starting to fold over at the waist, his hand moving towards his mouth. It was the way her brothers does in moments of hilarity. The photo had haunted her for 2 years. The first time she saw it, she thought the boy was her brother, and the man standing beside the fiddle was her dad. "Where am I?" she had said. She didn't believe her grandmother when she said, No, the boy is your father." When Becky Lawrence gave her the picture, Stephanie took it to a photographer and had a copy made. She sent the original back to Cape Breton. She had her copy framed. It was wrapped and hidden in her cupboard 2 weeks before Christmas. 3 times she had opened it so that she could look at it. 3 times she had to wrap it again. But Morley didn't know any of this as she climbed into bed. She fell asleep and was still worried about Christmas morning, about Stephanie, about the go-kart. She slept for a restless few hours and then woke up. When she couldn't get back to sleep, she decided to make herself a cup of tea. She was almost out of the bedroom before she noticed the ribbon tied around her wrist. Red. It ran to the door, into a red pile gathered at her feet. She was still dopey with sleep. She started to gather the ribbon up, and it was only as she did that she realized that the pile didn't end at her feet but continued down the stairs. She followed it. Down the stairs, past the tree, and into the kitchen. By the time she got to the back door, she had gathered an armful of ribbon, and she was smiling. Dave and Morley have a pear tree in the corner of their backyard. Morley followed the trail of ribbon out the back door and across the yard to the pear tree. The end of the ribbon, the end not tied to her wrist, led to a switch fastened to the base of the tree. There was a note. Merry Christmas. I chose you. Love, Dave. Morley flicked on the switch. The most amazing thing happened. The pear tree slowly came to life. Little lights began to snap on in the branches above her head, and then, as if the tree had been animated by Walt Disney himself, the lights spread along the branches until the entire tree was glowing a dark red crimson, a crimson like dark wine, a red light that cast magical glow over the backyard. Dave woke at 3 and sensed that he was alone in bed. He reached out his arm for his wife and didn't find her. He lay still. He tried to wake himself up. He got up and called her name. He walked to the back bedroom and looked out the window. Morley was sitting on the picnic table. She was wearing his work boots, the laces undone, and his winter coat over her nightie. On her head was a toque that belonged to Sam. She was cradling a mug of tea between her hands. From the perspective of the bedroom, she looked 12 years old. It had started to snow. Big, fat flakes of snow were dropping lazily out of the sky. Morley was staring at the snow as it floated out of the darkness and into the circle of red light. Dave pushed the bedroom window open and said, "Merry Christmas." Morley bent down and made a snowball, glowing now as she stood in the red light of the tree, and her wet hair sticking to her forehead. She was not working so quickly that Dave didn't have time to gather a handful of snow from the window ledge himself. Now the two of them threw their snowballs at almost the same time, and they both laughed in wonder when they collided in midair, spraying snow like a shower of icy fireworks through the silence of the night. Merry Christmas.